This is a Fleet Success Show, dedicated to helping you and your fleet succeed using the experience of fleet professionals and Hall of Fame fleet legends. The show that explores how the pillars of stakeholder satisfaction, intentional culture, resource efficiency, and risk management all combine to lead your fleet to success. We're glad you're here. Now, let's get into the show. All right, welcome back for another episode of the Fleet Success Show with your hosts, Josh Turley, Marc Canton, back in studio together again.
Yeah, man.
It's been I think it's been 2 months since you and I have been in studio together.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been a bit.
Yeah.
So for those of you who are just joining us for the first time, Josh Turley, CEO over here at RTA Fleet. I've been running this thing for, since 2015 anyways. But been here part of 21 years helping fleets do fleet management software, which is going to be relevant today. Marc, you've been in fleet for 30 some odd years, right? Going on 40, I'm sure.
Not quite, almost 30.
I'm turning 40 this year, and tell our listeners about yourself.
Yeah, sure. I ran a fleet at Fordham University in New York City and transportation for 20 years, and then been a consultant for the better part of 10 years with a heavy focus in analytics, right, and data, and leveraging data to help you run a better fleet. So then I got here a few years back. Love it because I feel like there's such an opportunity for software and technology to help change the world and really help fleets succeed. So here we are, man, and I love it. Let's do it.
So I know, we help fleets do a lot of stuff. Recently, we've been in the consulting business. We've brought on a whole stable of consultants. It's some incredible resumes. Obviously, as we talk about, like Tony, Scott Rude, Scott Conlon joining the team. We've got Chuck Kramer on the team. Steve Saltzgiver, who's been a podcast host for many years for us. And then we get the opportunity, we bring on new clients all the time with the fleet management software, right? And usually one of the biggest questions always comes up is, what about all this data, right? What do we do with this? How many years of data do we bring over? Things like that. And same thing, like when we're doing consulting projects, say we need this data, because anytime you're trying to analyze things, and it's, how far back do we need to go? And it's a hodgepodge usually. We talk about garbage in, garbage out, but like it's usually just a big garbage pail, And I think about the average tenure of a fleet manager and how long fleet managers have been there, right?
Right.
So talk to me about, let's just start with the first one, data retention.
Right.
How long should fleets keep their data?
Not long.
Not long.
Look, I understand that, especially like in government settings, there'll be, really even in corporate settings, there's usually some sort of rule or law or regulation that has been set that this is how long we keep things for various reasons. Risk management's involved, lawyers are always involved, and so forth. So I get if there's some sort of obligation there. Go ahead and keep what you're obligated to keep for as long as you're obligated to keep. But most of the stuff in our world does not fall in that category. There's some, you want to make sure you're PM compliant, you're inspection compliant, et cetera. But most of it does not fall into that world. And to be honest with you, like from an analytics perspective, when you're, which is looking at historical data to try to gain some insight about the future or a decision I want to make about the future, right? It's not relevant more than 5 years old. It's just not relevant. It's no good to you. And they'll have to take my word on it for now. But just think about like your everyday life, right? Think about the pace at which technology changes, right? When you look at vehicles, for example, let's talk about capital costs of vehicles, all right?
Yeah.
It does not follow the typical cost index of inflation.
No.
It always goes faster.
Yes.
Right? Because you have that inflation factor, but new technologies are always being brought on and they're always being added to the vehicle, which makes the overall expense go up much more quickly, right? So, you'll see fleets all the time, they'll inflate data for 5 years. It's like, yep, and then they have this shortfall in their reserve fund because they didn't account for how those things are going up in price. So, if you want to look at, let's say you're doing a life cycle analysis and you want capital costs more than 5 years ago are useless to you, right? Because you have then the same thing in the reverse, right? And COVID is a good example of that. What are residual values going to be? You need to look at trends that are recent. It does you no good to look at, how residual values changed over 5 years, 15 years ago. You want to know how they're changing over a recent time span, right? So when you're thinking in those terms, M&R, look at what's happening right now. We talk all the time about what is actively happening in the industry. Well, there's a technician shortage. Do you think that drives cost or reduces cost? It probably drives cost, right? So looking at something from, we have a customer recently or a prospect who I think is about to be a customer who's saying, yeah, we want to keep our data from 26 years ago and for the work order transaction data from, what?
And you have to ask why.
Why? Yeah, why? And I that's the interesting part.
So I'm sure the sentiment is like, well, I've still got that asset in service and I need to go know that I replaced the water pump on that vehicle. And how many times have I had to replace a water pump on that asset? And which water pump did I replace it with? And, whoever. But yeah, going back, 13, 20 years, at some point, it just doesn't make a difference anymore.
No.
Who cares?
Yeah.
In the words of Hillary Clinton, what difference does it make?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's interesting to me when you look at that. I think about, you mentioned already the capital cost.
Yeah.
When my wife and I first got married, we bought a 2012. Oh no, we would have first been married. So it was a 2006 or 2007 Toyota Corolla.
Okay.
Toyota Corolla S. That was one of the nicer ones, like a sporty steering wheel.
Yeah, and they
it was
last
the
forever.
only S thing that was about that car and the spoiler. But I love that little car, whatever. And they last forever.
Right.
And I want to say I had 12,000 miles on it, and we paid, I want to say 15,000. Maybe, no, it was less than that. It was like $13,000.
Okay.
We're now looking for a car for my daughter. So I'm like, okay, well, let's go look at a little Toyota Corolla. One, you can't find any that are, this was 2008. We bought this car. So it was only a year old, had 12,000 miles on it.
Right.
Well, I'm seeing now Toyota Corollas that are 2021. So they're 4 years old already. They've got 25,000 miles on them. And they're going for 20, 30 grand.
Right.
It's almost triple the cost that we paid, back in 2008.
Right.
Which definitely way outpaces inflation.
Sure.
So just even that curve is totally different. So you can't look at recent trends there. You already mentioned obviously the cost of technicians, cost of labor is totally different. So the M&R cost curves are there, but I think about like that transactional history, and you don't even know if it's the same part number anymore.
Yeah.
You don't know, why does that part number even matter? Who cares that it was done on that day and this, by this technician?
You don't need it.
Unless the NTSB is asking for it, which they're not going to go back. I can't imagine anybody asking for more than 7 years of repair history on an asset.
Exactly.
Even if you've had that. So because I know this is going to come up, and especially in some of our government fleets, where we may actually have an asset that's 30 years old.
Right.
And I think there's a mistaken belief, and maybe I could be wrong. If I'm wrong about this and there's some legal precedent and you've got your counsel that's told you otherwise, I don't think you need to keep, down to the transaction level detail for the entire life of that asset.
Correct. Exactly.
I think it's only you got to talk to your legal counsel and find out about your retention policies, but 5 to 7 years is probably legit.
Yes.
And that's enough for, any kind of legal counsel or legal defense
Yeah.
that you might want to mount. In fact, I bet you if you asked your legal counsel, they would tell you can't keep more than 7 years.
Get rid of it. Yes.
Because if you keep more than 7 years, you're actually liable for that data.
Right.
Okay, so we talked about those things. What we didn't talk about, and this is the thing I think is always, it's the thing that makes it easy for me to make this argument to people that are coming over.
Okay.
Most times when we have new customers, they are also new to the position, new to the job.
Yes.
Because one
At
of
least
the first
relatively
mandates
speaking. Yeah. Right.
is, hey, we need to get a fleet management system in place. We need to change how things are going. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been brought in.
Right.
Like they're brought in because something wasn't working with the previous fleet manager. Well, you think about how many times has that job turned over? And when you're doing that job and you're bringing in 13 years of data, the best way I can think about this is, I'm going to finish the story and then I'll put another analogy on this. When you're bringing in those 13 years of data, you're also bringing in 13 years of past fleet managers, right? So maybe it's only been one, right? It's been the guy that was there forever and did things his own way, and you're doing things a different way. That's not as bad, right? At least if he was consistent in his job, then you're in good shoes. At least what the garbage is. You know where the skeletons are buried. Right. Whatever bad practices they were doing, they were probably doing it the entire tenure.
Right.
But that's usually not the case. Usually you're taking over and it's been 3 or 4 fleet managers in that time span. And each fleet manager has had a different way of doing things which means that the data has been getting recorded differently.
Right.
Which means there's no consistency in that data set.
Absolutely.
Some of them were using, mechanic time tracking. Others were doing paper processes. Others weren't recording parts. Some were just doing manual charge outs. Like there's a million different ways that we've seen fleet manager turnover affect the integrity of the data in the system.
Great point.
Let alone all the processes with how do we handle downtime and driver pull-ups and stock outs and things of that nature. So not only are you bringing over 13 years of vehicle history, but you're bringing over 13 years of decision making, and we'll call it organizational garbage, right? Like the organizational health garbage and the dysfunction that was in that fleet department. You're bringing that all over too.
It's a great point.
Because the data just reflects the reality of what was happening in the moment.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to take this the one step further, which is you're bringing in all this stuff and it's sunk cost, right? If you don't know what sunk cost is, sunk cost essentially is like let's say you spent $50,000 on an asset and you have a decision is, do you spend 20 more thousand on it, or do you spend 10,000, start completely over, but you get, you start over with a brand new asset.
Right.
Right. Sunk cost fallacy is, but we've already put 50 grand into this project. It's just another 20 more. We can do this.
Right.
Instead of just looking at future outlays and saying, oh, well, it's 10 grand to do this or 20 grand to do this. It doesn't matter where you spend it.
It's gone. It's gone.
Well, it also applies to organizations and people, is that the decisions you made 5 years ago were made for a future that this person didn't know would exist.
Right.
And so you're letting your past self hold, right? And so in this case, we're letting the past version of the fleet
hold this fleet hostage.
Dictate how the future fleet is going to operate.
Right.
Because we're using that data from, more than 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And so there's this sunk cost fallacy that applies to data, which I had never thought about until this morning. I was listening to a book called The Psychology of Money. And he was talking about this. Fantastic book, by the way, if you ever want to learn more about that. But he talked about this whole idea of sunk cost in our decision making about who we are and who we are as like an organization, and how the decisions we make are also a form of sunk cost.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Right.
You're trying to like fulfill or justify something you did in the past.
Yeah.
So you keep following that path. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah. But then the data reflects those decisions, but then now you're making future decisions based off of the decisions you made 5 years ago.
Right.
Based off of data because of how you were doing things.
Right.
Instead of saying, you know what, like that's sunk cost, it's sunk data.
Right.
And so, but there's just an emotional tie that we have. Like we hoard data.
That's what it is. Yes.
There should be an episode of Hoarders on this.
Well, there's a fear there. So you're touching on a few things. I mean, number one, that's my intuition. I think it's like you don't know what you don't know and you fear what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
And it's like this legitimate fear of, oh my God, suppose there's something that's in there that some higher up or some lawsuit or some whatever is going to ask me, and it turns out I should have had it and I don't.
It's the unasked question.
Yes.
You don't know what you're going to get asked, and so you hoard data as a defense mechanism.
Right, as a just in case.
Yep.
And meanwhile, all it does is make it really difficult for you to use the good data, the relevant data that you have effectively, right? Because you get skewed outputs. And you make a really good point too. Like, think about, well, let me go back a step. Even to your point, like you said, oftentimes it's changing positions or changing the guard, or even when it's not, you're going through some sort of transformation, right? You're changing systems or you're acquiring a system because you want to transform the way you do business for the better, right? And it's your opportunity to make improvements. And we talk about this a lot as well, process improvements. And one of the process improvements that one of the types of process is how you track data and what you use that data for. That's going to be a major factor here. So to your point, something you just triggered for me is like, you can think about how many like different ways a field can be used in a system. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we have a thing, and as we see this, we try to sort of combat it and help people. But you have a field that says lease. Well, most of our customers, they see lease and they track the lease payment that fleet is paying to the leasing company in that lease. We had another customer come in and see that and immediately think, oh, that's what I'm charging my customers for their wet lease for what I'm providing to them, not what they're right. So you don't know what your predecessor put in
Right.
that system. Or even if you know what went in it, it might not be how you want to use it the next time.
Oh, heaven forbid. What if they never got trained?
Right,
Right?
exactly.
Like, that's half the problem is they never got trained in the system in the first place.
Correct, yes.
Oh, we've got one client that, and I know this for a fact because they actually got up in front of, they were part of a panel and they talked about all the different ways that they, bastardized the system essentially. If there was an empty field, they didn't care what the label said next to it.
Right.
They're like, there's a spot for data. We're putting it in there. And then I know where to go get that in my custom report writer so I can dimensionize this data any which way I can think of.
Right.
And if I need that data dimension, right. And I want to say this is a long-time customer. So they started with us probably in 1988.
Yeah, probably before we had unlimited custom fields.
Exactly. Well, and even before we had the first 20 that we built, right. They were making their own custom fields out of pretty much any field.
Right.
But then they would do it differently. So they had to do all this if-then logic. Is like, well, if it's a vehicle, then the engine make isn't actually an engine make. And then if it's a trailer, the engine make is used for this, right?
It's the refrigerator or something.
Oh my gosh, all over the place. And so we used to call it rod logic.
Right.
Is you had to know the rod logic is how did he use that field that one time, and then where's it documented? Well, the only place it was documented was in the custom report.
Right. Exactly.
So when you took over for that guy, and somebody did have to take over for that guy,
lost in a
then
storm.
it was like, okay, well now that's not the right way to do it anymore.
Yes.
You talk about changing technology. The system that he started with in 1988 was green screen. Then he went to Windows, right? Let's talk about this. Then he went to the Windows version of RTA. And then finally they're going to Fleet 360 on web.
Right.
Completely different user interfaces, completely different capabilities. You mentioned the unlimited user-defined fields.
Yeah, right.
That's something we've had for probably 10 years. But if you're only bringing over if you're bringing over 30 years of data, well, now you've got to figure out where to put all that stuff.
How do you map all that?
And you got to remap it and migrate it, And so, we always have fun when people come to RTA and they're like, yeah, I want to bring over all my data. And it's like, hold on.
Right.
We have an opportunity here.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this on the podcast before.
Yeah.
Right. There's an
opportunity.
opportunity.
It just keeps coming up
every time because there's this tendency.
Right.
And it's I don't know, is it a scarcity mindset? There's a fear mindset for it, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. But scarcity could be an element there too. And it's funny too, because oftentimes we'll advise people, there are ways to quell your fear and still not make the mistake of, pulling all this data into your system. Keep a flat file. Go get a copy of the database.
Dump it out to Excel. Dump it out to Access database if you want to.
Exactly. You can always go get it now, but it's not muddying, the good stuff and the new stuff.
In fact, if I were going to do that, now I'm a little more technical, but I'm assuming everybody's got an IT department. If I could get a copy of my old database, I would, just go grab a copy of SQL Server Express, load that up somewhere. If hopefully we've got an enterprise version of SQL Server, and you park the data there so you can query it, throw Power BI at it, Excel at it, whatever you need to.
Exactly.
And then if you do need to get any data out, it's still there. You just don't have to bring it all into the system.
Right. Which, by the way, is a good practice anyway, in my opinion, right? You should be creating periodic copies of your database anyway, So, but in any event, that's one option. Obviously, we talk about rolling up. Yeah, if you got a 20-year-old vehicle, and because that's going to be the first objection people listening to this. Well, Mark, I got a 15-year-old truck. What do you want me to not keep the history on the whole? And I'm saying, yeah, don't.
Yeah.
Keep the last 5 years from a sort of line item perspective, right? From a detail perspective. And roll the rest of it up. Okay.
Consolidate it.
Yeah, I know before 2020, this is how much we spent in M&R. This is how much we've depreciated it on the books, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, you can have some notes. You know what? Hey, we rechanged the hydraulic arms on the bucket, in year whatever, so that you have that note and it was done and keep whatever. I'm not saying you can't account for it in some way,
right?
But you don't need that level of transaction. And again, it's just going to hurt you.
You can have repair histories, right? So we separate, you've got transaction level detail, which is we posted this part on this date for this cost.
Right.
Which that cost is garbage anyways.
Yes, exactly.
10 years ago, that water pump cost $45.
Correct.
Now that water pump costs $115.
Right.
The warranty, the metallurgy is completely different. It's probably made in a different factory, right?
Yeah.
Like it's useless.
Right.
But what you can roll it up. And then if you want to keep line level detail. So I know that, hey, on this date, we replaced the water pump. And I know who the technician was that did it, but it's one line of data instead of 3 lines of data.
Right.
There's other reasons to do this as well, which is it can improve the speed of your system.
Right.
Right. If you're only querying, you think about that example. If we roll, let's say 3 to 5 transactions into one single record, that's a 80% reduction in the size of your data.
Right.
That's
It's
an 80%.
massive.
It's massive when you talk about scale
Yeah.
and performance. And this is where like my technical background always comes in.
Yeah.
If I reduce the number of records I have to read by 80%, I can improve the speed by 80%. That's
Right.
just simple linear math.
Yeah. Right.
So your system speeds up all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So there's some like benefits to cleaning up your house
Yeah.
here.
Exactly. It's a good analogy as well. Like, it's just like your house. You know, you walk into your house, you haven't done a spring cleaning in a while. It feels cluttered. You're not as comfortable. You feel grumpy going in instead, right? And it's harder to find the things you're looking for that you really want.
Yeah.
You know, I can go on and on and on. You do a nice little cleanup. You get things organized. You keep exactly what you need and what you're actually going to use. Throw out that shirt in the closet that maybe you love because your uncle gave it to you when you were 6, but you're just never going to put it on again.
You got to go KonMari on this stuff, right? Like you just got to, does this bring me joy?
Right,
No, get rid of it. Okay, so take that further. Maybe I don't need the line level detail. I don't need to know that, you know, we had this many hours on this line and this many hours on this line. We consolidate it, like you said, turn it into notes.
Right.
And now I can just see that, yeah, there was a work order 18567, and it was open on this date, closed on this date. And then here's a summary of what was done on that work order.
Right.
And that's it.
Done.
Well, now I've taken 5 transactions, consolidated to one line. I've taken 5 lines, consolidated to one work order. Now it's not an 80% reduction. That's like, you know,
Yeah.
you're getting close to
Exponential.
90. It
Yeah.
starts exponentially, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's 80% times 80%. So
Yeah. And we've had to do this. I mean, we have customers who have 20, I mean, they've been with us forever. God bless them. Thank you. And, you know, 20 plus years, and they're looking at their dashboards and they're going, yeah, but I don't know how to make sense of that pie graph. And it's like, well, and then I'm looking through their filters and I'm like, do you really need 1981 on this? Because
Right.
if not, we can really help this go much faster and much better and actually be easier to use if we just kind of cut this puppy off and say, let's just look at the last, 5 years, or that sort of a thing.
when we were coming up with our, because one of our goals at RTA is to help fleets save $100 billion.
Right.
Not $100 billion, $1 billion.
1 billion, 100 million, 1 billion.
We had started
We'll
with
get to
100 million, right? We're at 322 today, by the way.
Yep.
But
Sweet.
we had set this goal of like, hey, let's save $100 million. And the question came up was like, since when?
Right.
Wow, that's a great question. Well, so we made the decision. It's like, well, let's do it since the day I took over the company, right? Which is July 15th, 2017. And so that was the day we set. But we could have gone back further.
Sure.
And maybe 2017 wasn't, maybe it was too far back. Maybe we should have only gone back 5 years. It just felt a little more emotional for that date.
Yeah, for obvious reasons.
For obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something like I wouldn't go back further than that because like that wasn't
It wasn't you.
It wasn't me, and
Right.
it wasn't part of the like the system we were in. But it's like, from this day forward, this is how much we've done.
Right.
But I think about that, I'm like, but the system was different back then. There was different time savings, like the way, like we're just making assumptions about how that was calculating back then.
Right.
And so from this day forward, it's like, no, every time we do this again, like we're going to do new time studies.
Right.
And we're going to say from this day forward, it's going to be a different time calculation than it would be, based on what we did the study last year.
Right.
So we'll refresh that and keep those methods up to date.
Yeah.
But we're not going to go back and apply tomorrow's logic to yesterday's data.
Yeah.
This doesn't work that
It doesn't
way.
make sense. Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's a good point. I could totally see us maybe one day saying, all right, well, let's only do 360 and, we'll start with that date or something like that. Right. So
we might purge and say, okay, well now let's save $1 billion, but only since the day we sunset Classic or something.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
We know for a fact how long it takes to do a work order in paperless shop in Fleet 360. So everything from this day forward is just that number.
Right.
I don't know. We'll get there.
If you're looking for fleet experts and former fleet managers sharing their best practices and advice, networking opportunities with hundreds of fleet professionals, and live, hands-on training sessions and workshops designed to help you take your fleet to the next level, then you need to register for RTA Connect 2025. It's the fleet event of the year. Join us September 22nd through 26th in Las Vegas and get the tips, tricks, and tools you need to help your fleet succeed. Visit www.rtafleet.com/connect to learn more.
And let's talk, because I think the key thing, and like I think we're implying this, but let's call this out a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like, why do you have an FMIS? And one of the things we talk about here is there are a lot of organizations, unfortunately, and it's my pet peeve. They use it as a digital filing cabinet.
Oh, for sure.
Right.
Yep.
And so it's just compliance tracking is really all it is, right? And I get you have to do that. That's important. You do got to do it. But really what you're trying to do is you're trying to leverage data, right, to gain some sort of insight to help you make better decisions so that you can address all of the 4 pillars of fleet management that we talk about, right? So that's it. It's about being able to use the data. So think about that. If that's the goal, well, what do you need, right? If your goal is to go out and change a tire, right, a hammer is no use to you, you know? What's the tool that you need? What's the information you need? What's the et cetera, et cetera. And if you just kind of pause and use that and reset on that every so often. Now, from the risk management perspective, again, you're going to have compliance issues. All right, this is what I have to keep. This is what either regulation or the lawyers or whoever. All right, keep that. That's your risk management piece, right? But from your resource efficiency, man, you know, from your stakeholder satisfaction, you know, who cares if they loved you 10 years ago?
Yep.
What did they say about you last month?
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly it.
So it really, again, history is important. And if you want to file some things away and, you know, got no problem with that. But when you're looking at the today and to tomorrow, you really, if your scope is too wide this way into history, there's no way you can well see what's going on here on today and in the future, right? You gotta close that enough so that you can have a proper focus there, right? Like trying to think of other ways to tell people.
It's to say that like with cameras, cameras and telescopes, you've got to narrow the aperture so you can focus on the right aspect. Otherwise, it floods the camera lens and you get all this washout and like sun flares and stuff.
Yeah.
I think about, like our financial data, we've obviously been in business since 1979 or whatever. I think I have financials going back to 2011, but we don't have transaction data going back that far. Right. What do we do? Well, we collapsed it. And so now I've just got a bunch of journal entries, and I think I have annual data from like 2011 through 2015 or 17. And then I go monthly. You know, all I'm doing is just changing what we call granularity. Right. Is how granular is the data. Right. So I've got annuals, and then I go monthly. And then I want to say the last somewhere, it's either 3 or 5 years, we have full, detailed transaction level data. But every year we go through this process of, okay, it's time to collapse. Right. Collapse that year into monthly, and then collapse those monthlies into annual. Just again to make it cleaner, make it easier, and because it just doesn't matter as much anymore. Right. But I still like being able to go back into 2011 and see, hey, where were we? In fact, I had somebody ask me this question because they were interviewing me for just, hey, where's the company at versus where was it when you took over and like when your dad died. And I wish I could go back and find out, hey, when's the day that we hit 2 million in revenue? When's the day that we hit our first million in revenue? I don't have that level of detail. I'm sure Dad's got that somewhere, but I can't ask him. So, but I went back and I was like, oh, well, when Dad passed away in 2014, this is where we were at in revenues. And then when I took over in 17, and then I was able to kind of benchmark all these different events in the history and align them with some of this historical data. So I like being able to do that. Sure. But I don't need all the granular. I don't need to know that Dad went to Office Depot and spent $279 on a computer monitor
at
that year.
16 a.m. at
I just did this garbage. I don't need the credit card statements, right? So you collapse it. You look for the big stories, reduce your granularity, so that it's it's easier to see and just easier to look at in the system. Yeah. So.
And if you do know the history, oftentimes it's going to tell you, to your point earlier, like what is it that you were even keeping? A lot of times the maturity of these organizations in those yesteryears was, it's almost like mind-boggling. What is it that you're even keeping? And you see it too. It's not just maintenance and repair, and like sometimes it's motor pool. You don't need motor pool reservations from 2005, man. You just don't.
Nope.
You just don't. I don't know. Yeah, you want, like you said, I like keeping the history. Hey, maybe we had 30 assets then. Now we got 130 assets.
Keep the big stuff, right? Yeah, and that's where dashboards are nice, right? You can do snapshots with dashboards. Sure. You just get some snapshots and, just keep the big metrics.
Yeah. Scan in the newsletter.
That's maybe I want to, right? Like keep the historical artifacts. Yeah. I've got like some really cool old pictures, things like that. Yeah. But okay, maybe it's not motor pool reservations. Maybe you want to just know how much in revenue did you pull in from your motor pool? Sure. For 30 assets. Is your revenue per asset going up since then? Hopefully. So you can kind of compare those benchmarks.
Summary data was great for that, right? Yes. Hey, look, we had 30 assets. This is the revenue. This was our expenses. Yep. Right? I couldn't agree more with that. Yep. We advocate that. Keep that. But
yeah, no, you don't need to know that. Well, this was checked out on this Friday. and went to this Friday or whatever. Like you just don't need that level of detail.
Right. So let's help folks kind of address this, like first off, if you have the fear element hitting you, for one, contact legal, contact leadership, right? Hey, are there any rules? What are the rules? What do I have to keep? And then you can make sure you're in compliance there. And, and you don't have to have that fear, right? I've done my diligence. I know this is what and again, how do you have to keep it? Because it might be totally fine to just keep that flat file as long as you can read it when you need to, like you said.
Throw it out to a CSV and put it in a SharePoint somewhere.
Right.
Yep.
In which case now this new system you're about to get into is completely your own, and you control it, and you can make the decision. So that's probably step one, right? Go control the fear, right? And then step two is something along the lines of, well, what is it that I'm going to need to do data analysis, or what is it that I'm going to need to make good decisions about my future, right? And maybe you talk to, maybe you have an analyst on staff. Maybe IT has some analysts they can help you with. Again, go get some expert help. If that's what you need to. And when I say that, I'm not talking about a $30,000 consulting engagement for something like this. I'm talking about just get some advice. Like, what do I really need, right? What else? What else would you say is I think like the fear thing is the key thing. I really do think that's like the big.
Yep.
How do you get over that?
Well, and I'd say that should go down the longer you're in your career, right? If you're, somebody who's long in the tooth, and this is something that's interesting to me, is that people who have been in the career longer tend to hold on to more data.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that correlation exists, but if you're younger in your career, maybe you just don't know better.
Right.
So, but it's interesting is that goes complete opposite to the thing which you said, which is I don't know what question I'm going to be asked. Well, the longer you're in your career, you've been asked a lot of questions. Think about those. Right. Like, well, what are the questions I haven't asked?
Accidents, a few.
What are the things? And this is where I like to be really proactive about. Well, this is what I'm planning on showing. What do I need to show every month?
Right.
What do I need to show every year?
Right.
You be intentional about the data you're showing. Most of the time, that's going to be sufficient enough, right? And you pick the metrics, and you share more than you need to, for sure. But that will drive the conversation. And if there's follow-up and little things like that, then you address and say, well, we can start tracking that going forward.
Right.
You don't have to go back and be like, well, I don't have that data historically. Let me go see if I can fudge it together.
Right.
I'm going to hold on to this forever just because I don't want to look like an idiot. No, we're not tracking that.
Yeah.
So like, it's just have that mindset of things is, well, I'll start doing that from this point forward instead of I'm going to keep this forever just in case that one day I get asked. Because otherwise you're going to keep all this data for that one moment that will never come. And you're doing it for probably 20 or 30 of those moments when instead you could just wait for that to happen and then start collecting the data for that thing.
Yeah.
Be proactive, be smart, and say, these are the 20 or 30 things that I want to know. These are the things I think they should know.
Right.
And you start with that.
Yeah.
And then everything else, just if it's not pertinent, if it's not necessary, let it go.
Let it go. Yeah. And something you said earlier too, I think is interesting, which is, what do you know about the past version of the organization? If you know nothing, that's an indicator.
That's a huge, I don't think you can understate that.
Right.
It's a huge indicator that data has little relevance to you other than telling you what the other guy did wrong.
Correct.
In fact, like I would almost like, that's like a poison pill. And I don't want my data getting sullied by that.
Right.
Like it's almost tainted where it's, it's going to rot it's rotten fruit.
Right.
And it's going to rot my good fruit.
Right.
So you got to keep it separated.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great point. And that's kind of where I'm going with it. Like if you do know that your labor rate hasn't changed in the last 15 years and it's currently $45 an hour,
13,
like, well, in that case, you could just throw out all the M&R. You still want to know maybe your parts turn,
yeah.
But I mean, geez, right? So if you know that the practices were bad, well, that just makes all that stuff all the more reason to not hold on to it. Hold on to it, right?
Yeah.
So
I probably am looking at 2 to 3 years. If I'm trying to do any kind of analysis or trend analysis, like I'll probably keep 2 to 3 years of data.
I agree.
Even if I didn't like the way the other guy was doing things, like I would, 2 to 3 years, that would help me think things through and, okay, I know why these are the problems, or I'll go back and why is this such a problem? Go be like, okay, there you go.
Right.
It's because this is how they were tracking it. We don't want to do that. We're going to do it this way instead.
Right.
But just know, like if I'm running a dashboard and it's got a 12-month time span on it, it's going to take 12 months for any decision you make today to show up on that dashboard. Because it's obviously like you're reporting 12 months in arrears. So it's going to take that much time for you to get that process clean.
Right.
all the way through for next year.
Right.
It's just how data and time works.
It's just how it works. Yeah. And in our experience, like, I talked to Griffin earlier today, he's our fleet management analyst, and Christy, and we're blessed. We have a few. In our experience with the consulting engagements, like, we do usually need at least 2 years of decent data.
Yeah.
Okay. 3 years, if there's a critical mass and the data solid, 3 years is like the sweet spot, right?
Yeah.
We don't ever want more than 5. Now, you made the point earlier about 7. 7 is a common number you see in governments and others where they have to keep that or whatever. So I get it. Like, I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah.
But
so you can hold on to 7.
Yeah.
We're never going to ask you for
We're not
more than
asking
5.
for- right.
And we might stop at 3.
Yeah.
But again, if you've got garbage data, I don't want 3 years of that.
No.
Give me 2.
Give me 2.
I'll take 2. And
Yes.
then we'll because even then there's going to be holes in the data. There's going to
Yeah.
be, gaps, and it's going to be inconsistent.
Right. It's easier to just clean it up and go get some industry or whatever you need to do.
And the smaller amount of data I have to clean up, the better and faster the project goes.
Right. Exactly.
It's not that counterintuitive, but it's one of those things that you're just thinking, oh, the more data, the better.
Right. No,
it's not. It's just more stuff that you have to go through.
Yes.
It's like having more space in your garage.
Yeah.
It just means that you have more clutter.
Yeah. Right. Another good indicator, just, I know I'm beating it, but someone sends us a spreadsheet, right? And they got rows and rows and rows and columns and columns and columns, right? If your spreadsheet looks like this, here's let's say your asset along the first column, and there's blank spots. Even if you got a bunch filled, but there's blank spots
Swiss
all
cheese.
over, and it's Swiss cheese. That's a good one. Yeah. Swiss cheese or polka dot. Nope.
It's not consistent.
Don't bother.
Yeah. You want consistent data. You want, I would say like 80, 90% participation rate in any data field.
Correct.
In order to gain any kind of insight.
That's
if
reliable.
you're 50-50 on any data field, it's like, it's not really going to give you anything.
Right.
Maybe some vehicles that's really important. Other vehicles it's not.
Right. Unless you find obvious lines of partition where it's like, the fleet's 50-50, but I got 100% of police.
Yes.
Right.
Like
Well, now you
100%
can
of
say
this
something
class
about
code,
police.
100% of this class code, right? And we've seen that. Or this type of, make and model or whatnot.
Right.
This department. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But you have to organize it that way.
Yeah.
But if it's just Swiss cheese all over the place, and
It's a pretty good indicator.
Because when we were acquiring assets in 2011 and 2015, this fleet manager required us to put in these data fields.
Right.
From 2015 to 2018, this fleet manager didn't. And then in 2018, we got a new fleet manager, and he required not only the first data fields, but then he added another set of data. When we talk about sunk costs, this is what I'm talking about.
Right.
Right. That's what creates Swiss cheese in your data sets.
Yes.
So
Yeah. That's interesting.
yeah. And that happens all the time. It happens.
Yeah.
For anybody that's had to take over for somebody, it's just that data is literally just a representation of how they ran things.
Right.
So
Right.
until you're in the job for a few years, then it becomes your data, and it's all your fault at that point. But that's a different podcast episode. So you talk to legal, you think about proactively what data, what metrics really do I want to drive? Because the metrics should drive your data collection policies.
Bingo.
If you're collecting data and you don't have a metric tied to it, you're collecting the wrong data.
Right.
So start with the metrics, identify the data that the metrics need to support them. Then think, how far back do I need to go for this metric to be reliable and usable? Most of the time, anywhere from a month, 12 months, maybe 2 years. Like you said, you're not usually going to go back more than 3.
Yep.
I don't know. Where do you go from there? Figure out how to purge, and I would say you don't have to switch fleet management systems to do this.
No.
A lot of them have the capability of archiving data or purging data.
Right.
I always like archiving. Maybe I'm a hoarder too, just in case legal comes back and says, hey, like, you don't need all that data. But if you need 7 years, then okay, well, after 7 years, then start purging.
Right.
Or finding a way to like do a roll up function in your data. I would much rather roll up than purge.
Right.
If you are switching FMIS, that's a great opportunity. We've talked about that in past podcast episodes. It's a great time to clean your data. Don't bring in the garbage just because that's the way it is and you don't have time. Make the time, make the investment. Your future self will thank you for the cost you're sinking today.
Right.
In fact, your future fleet managers will thank you for the
Right.
time and effort you put into making this a clean data set. It's a great opportunity because this system that you're going to has a completely different set of processes. And it's difficult to compare, well, is this a time saving because of the system? Is this a time saving because we implemented a new process? Or is this just a time saving because I'm a new fleet manager and I have a different way of doing things?
Right.
And so it's very hard to be comparing apples to oranges when you're bringing in old data from an old system.
Right.
Doesn't mean you don't do it. It just means take the opportunity to clean it before you get there. So at least you're starting off on the right foot.
Yeah.
We've even gone so far as to say, don't bring over any data.
Yeah.
Just bring over the records, the master records.
Right.
The file cabinet.
The file cabinet. Right?
Bring me your assets. Give me your parts. Give me your employees. Maybe your vendors.
Start from there.
Start from there.
And,
Right.
and it's funny you say that, but man, the customers who choose to do that,
They're so much happier.
they're so much happier.
And yet the customers that like we fight this battle
Yes.
like tooth and nail, and they just, the ones that really, really want to bring over the data, they're so frustrated, even 6 months into it, because the system's not working, this data is not showing the right way. And it's like, well, yeah, because that system didn't show this data this way, right? We have a different way of doing things.
Yeah, but they find that they get value out of the system so much more quickly,
way faster, yeah.
right? And again, they still have the data. It's just in a flat file somewhere, right?
It's
not that
somewhere
it's not
else.
there if they need it. Oh, I really need to know what we did 3 years ago to this thing. Was there frame damage? Nobody works here who was in the shop at that time.
Yeah.
And
Your
looks
list of
funny to
open
us,
work
right?
orders. Yeah. Bring in your open work orders.
Yeah.
So let's not stop the shop.
Sure.
But yeah, that's pretty much,
That's it. But that's actually a really great point, because when they come in flat, boy, they hit the ground. Those customers are the ones who tend to hit the ground running.
and they set it up the exact way that they want it from the get-go instead
Right.
of, because this is why it forces you to look at it. It forces you to clean it. And what you're doing is you're overcoming all the bureaucratic inertia of, well, this is just what was in there, and I'm just accepting the status quo. It keeps the status quo from poisoning the next system,
It does.
right? It's that sunk cost. It keeps the sunk cost from coming in and affecting the future self.
Yeah.
It's a choice you have to make to do it, though, because it does take an investment to clean up the data and massage it and say, no, okay, we're going to invest in start over.
Right.
But from that day forward, it's you, it's your fleet, it's your data, and this new system.
Yeah.
It's
a great point.
clean.
I've never connected those two dots before this conversation. But one of the other things we always say is when you got a new system, it's a great opportunity to clean up your processes, right?
Yeah.
And it's true, it is. But you just kind of said something that's like light bulb. It's like that attachment to the old data is a direct sort of, let's say, correlation to attachment to the old process.
Yeah.
Right. And even when you get folks who are willing to think, and it's like, yeah, but we had this data, so we need to do it this way because we got to collect this data. What does this data do for you? What problem is it solving?
We have to keep that data relevant.
Right.
Right. In order to keep that data relevant, that means that we have to do the process the same way.
Right.
Otherwise, it makes that data irrelevant.
Yeah, which is like some subconscious thing, which means the work I did in the past wasn't relevant or something like that. I don't know, but
We're going to call it, it's not sunk cost fallacy now. It's going to be sunk self fallacy. Right? It's the past self of you. You're letting the past you dictate what future you does.
yes.
Isn't that crazy?
Very much so. Very much so. And I know we're all guilty of it a little bit.
All the time.
But man, yeah. Yeah, interesting. Don't do it.
Yeah. So the other reason, like you could start over clean, you start over fresh, but there's just nothing holding you back from adopting a new process, a new technology, a new piece of the software that you wouldn't use before. Maybe you couldn't use because the data didn't support it.
Mm-hmm.
There's some historical stuff that's really cool, like warranty tracking, whatever. Sure. But for the most part, just like I said, 12 months of lead time, and in a year, you'll be further ahead than you would be if you try to bring over all this old data and then shoehorn your new processes into your old processes into the new system.
Yeah. I think we've hit it, man. I think we've hit it again. The data.
This horse is dead. We've
and again, when we think about everything we've covered, right? Like, if you don't believe us now, I don't know. Like, even if it's great data, even if you are the best and your organization's history was perfect, if such a thing exists, at collecting data and cleaning data and keeping data great, it still becomes irrelevant. Still becomes irrelevant. That's what we started with.
Obsolescence.
At some point, there's no value to you because there's nothing you can do with it, so to speak, from an analytical perspective. And again, in our industry, the way costs change, there's just no correlation. It changes so quickly that I'm just trying to think of something I could accomplish with 15-year-old data. And I can't think of anything. And I can't remember ever using it for any purpose, So number one, probably you're spoiling the well. Number two, it's probably creating some sort of resistance to or harming your opportunity to improve your organization in some way, shape, or form. And number three, even if none of that is true, it's still useless to you. So it's like keeping the old shirt that doesn't fit anymore.
Yep.
You know, listen, as a
day.
chubby guy, one day I'm going to
One
fit
day.
in it again. Like, yeah, but by then the moths will have eaten it. And
Well, or the opposite, right? Everybody's on Ozempic now, and they're all losing weight, but they're not getting rid of the old clothes.
yes. In case I gain it back.
In case, because I don't know, right? You're almost like counting on it to happen.
Yes.
And even more reason, we call it Cortez when he came over from Spain and he got to the Americas, right? He burned the ships because he was so committed to this thing, right?
Yeah.
Well, when you do the same thing, burn the data,
Right.
Get rid of it and say, nope, this is the new way we're doing things.
And let's start fresh.
Yeah, let's start fresh.
Yeah.
I like it.
Cool.
All right. That's going to do it for us. As always, if you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you. I know I got a couple emails in this week to podcast@rtafleet.com. Love hearing from you guys. Questions, comments. If you do know that I said something wrong about legal and retention,
Yeah.
I would love to hear that.
Educate us.
But I'm pretty sure go talk to your counsel and they'll tell you that, oh no, we want to get rid of that data.
Yeah.
So you'd be surprised at what they say. Otherwise, until next time.
Take care, everybody.
We hope you enjoyed the show. If you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others. Post about it on LinkedIn or leave a review. Want to learn more about our fleet management software, Fleet 360? Check us out at rtafleet.com. If you want to learn more about having your fleet evaluated by our consulting team, go to fleetconsulting.com.